This is Chapter 7 of the book Out of Many Waters. No safe hiding. The dawn came slowly, slipping under the longboat until it found Isabel shivering in the early morning dampness. She blinked her eyes open, but felt no comfort in the coming of day. By now she knew that a high fever gripped her body. She licked at her parched lips. With no prospect of water and no hope of improvement, she could only wait and try not to think about what she waited for. A shrill whistle blasted 2 notes. There was a brief moment of silence. Then the call was repeated. Isabel had learned that the whistle called the sailors on deck and that they took turns, some working or standing watch, others going below deck to rest. She listened to the familiar sound of boots hitting the planking and the low guttural greetings exchanged between the sailors. As the men took up their jobs and the expected sounds met Isabel's ears, so did an unfamiliar one. Someone walked lightly across the deck directly toward the longboat. The muffled footsteps drew near and then seemed to continue past it. Isabel hardly dared to breathe. Whoever had approached so stealthily must be standing just inches away. Had they come to spy on her? Then she heard 3 short raps on the outside of the boat. Her body tensed as she waited for the signal to be repeated, but instead Isabel heard the angry shout of a sailor stomping across the deck. His boots came to a halt on the side of the longboat opposite the railing. If someone has left food, she thought, he won't notice it unless he walks all the way around. To her relief, the sailor stood his ground, continuing his verbal assault on whoever it was who had just knocked on Isabel's hiding place. In a moment, she heard the softer footsteps move hurriedly away. How strange, she thought, that my mysterious visitor did not answer the sailor. Perhaps he does not understand Dutch. Isabel waited until she was certain the sailor had also left before allowing herself to peer out from under her turtle-like shell. A slice of bread and another cup of water stood in the same spot as the last gift. She was convinced now that the cheese and water of the previous night had been meant to help her. Still, Isabel did not reach for the food immediately. Remembering her mental promise to Maria, she tried to be cautious. She waited and listened keenly for the unusual noises. She pressed her palms against the deck and pulled herself closer to the opening. She winced at the tremendous pain in her back and the tingling numbness in her legs. The effort to drag herself just a few inches was draining. She closed her eyes and rested a moment, breathing in short, shallow breaths. Listening for any sign of danger one last time, Isabel slowly extended her hand and brought the cup into her domain. Unable to wait another second, she lifted it to her mouth and drained its contents in just a few swallows. How dry her throat was. She dropped her head to her arm, disappointed that the water was gone so quickly. I cannot eat, she thought, but I must take the bread and save it. Her hand fumbled toward the bread, and just as her fingers closed around it, a heavy boot came crushing down on her hand, pinning her fingers painfully to the deck. No, she shrieked. Her voice echoed in the hollow wooden core of the rowboat, which was drowned in the husky, victorious shout of the sailor. The sailor clamped his rough, calloused hands around Isabel's arm and pulled her roughly from under the longboat, shouting loudly. Bright sunlight streamed into Isabel's eyes, making them blink and tear. She struggled to shade them, but the sailor pinned her arms behind her in a vice-like grip. As her eyes began to focus, Isabel saw a crowd of faces. They laughed and stared and pointed at her. Where had they come from so suddenly? She looked around fearfully, expecting the Spanish sailors she had overheard to rush forward and take her away. Then the crowd parted and silence fell. A tall, imposing man strode across the deck and stopped in front of Isabel and her gloating captor. Through the haze of her fever, Isabel recognized the rakish tilt of the man's white-plumed hat and the thick, drooping mustache that framed a firm-set mouth. It was the ship's captain himself. His eyes narrowed, and he folded his arms across his chest. He began rocking slowly on his heels, back and forth, in a motion that made Isabel feel dizzy and nauseous. The captain spoke, glaring at her fixedly, and Isabel was sure he was asking her a question, but she could not understand his Dutch. When she did not answer, the sailor, gripping her arms, yelled in her ear and twisted her arms more tightly behind her. He then directed his words to the captain, apparently giving an explanation of how he had found her. I wonder if he will also tell how he tricked me and crushed my hand, she thought in defeat. He didn't have to hurt me. I would have come out. The captain continued to rock back and forth and seemed to ignore the sailor. He had not once turned his gaze away from her, and she could not bear to look at him directly. Again, he seemed to ask a question. No one spoke. Without warning, he unfolded his arms, and Isabel tried to push herself back, afraid that he was going to strike her. But she only moved more closely against the sailor who held her. She was trapped between the two men. The captain, however, merely began stroking his mustache in a thoughtful manner. "Espanol?" he asked. She shook her head no. "Portuguese?" Sim, Isabel answered now. "Yes, I speak Portuguese." A man stepped forward from the crowd of people who watched with curiosity. He was dressed neatly in brown, with a white starched collar that hung across his shoulders. A plain black hat set squarely on his head. He spoke in a simple and direct way. "Desculpe," he said in clear Portuguese. He removed his hat momentarily and bowed curtly to the captain. "I speak both Portuguese and Dutch. I would be happy to interpret for you, if it would be of help." The captain answered in halting Portuguese, and then the conversation continued in Dutch. The captain now addressed the passenger in his native tongue, and the man immediately related each question to Isabel in Portuguese. Isabel's answers went through the same process in reverse. "I know that 2 young girls ran away from the friars in Recife, and that neither of them could be found before the ship sailed," the captain began. "You are one of those children, are you not?" "Yes," Isabel admitted in a soft voice, looking down at her feet. Her head throbbed and her face felt hot. Still, the captain said that neither of the runaways had been found. There was hope that Maria had also boarded one of the ships and was safely hidden. At least the news was not that one of the girls had been caught. "Is there another child with you on this ship?" the captain demanded. Isabel could not have lied to this hard-jawed man, and she was glad she knew nothing of Maria's whereabouts. "No," she answered firmly. "You are a converso?" the interpreter asked Isabel gently, but she had not missed the sharp tone in which the captain had originally asked the question. How should she answer? To be a converso was to secretly follow the Jewish faith, yet pretend to be a Catholic. She did neither. The captain repeated his question, but the interpreter was silent. "I am Isabel," she said finally, raising her eyes briefly. Hearing her name, as if Maria was calling to her, she straightened up and summoned all her strength and pride. Her voice rose. "My name is Isabel Ben Lazar." "Well, Isabel," the captain continued, forgetting his question, "why have you favored us with your presence on our ship, or should I say, under our longboat?" There were titters from the crowd at his little joke. Isabel stammered, I must go to Amsterdam." Now the captain seemed to be playing to the passengers and crew, who watched him appreciatively. "She wants to go to Amsterdam. At least she's on the right ship." There was laughter then, and as the sounds of the onlookers continued for a moment, the man who was translating added 2 words of his own, quickly and quietly. Isabel strained to catch them. He said, "No more." He must mean I should say no more, she thought, but why? The man in the brown doublet now translated with his own words. It seemed to Isabel as if he had taken her side in the confrontation, and she felt an unexplained confidence in him. The captain stroked his mustache impatiently. He began rocking on his heels, speaking decisively as Isabel's unknown supporter explained. "He is exasperated with you, child. He threatens to make you work on the ship and to have you return to Recife as soon as we reach port." "I am not afraid to work," Isabel offered. She lifted her head and searched the eyes of her interpreter. "But don't let him send me back," she pleaded. The 2 men carried on a brief conversation in Dutch, and the captain's features registered an expression of surprise. He then smiled, but Isabel saw no warmth in it. He continued rocking, and the board beneath his heels began to squeak. Isabel did not understand what was happening. They were talking about her, yet she was not a part of the discussion. All her life, people had told her what to do, but she was here on the ship by her own efforts. It had been Maria's plan, but she had made it work. She could not let them make her go back to her old life at the monastery. Everything was different now inside her. The captain barked an order and the sailor released her arms. Isabel suddenly felt as if she were swaying on air. Her legs were weak, and as the ship rolled, she wobbled unsteadily. "It will be all right," her translator reassured you. "We are your friends, and we will take care of you." Isabel stared at the man in disbelief. "But who are you?" she asked him. "How can you be my friends when I don't know you? Why would you do this for me?" The man smiled sympathetically. "We are God's people, as you are, and that makes you a part of our family. We will not abandon you." The man's words were kind, but she did not want to hear any more about God. What did he know about her? So many questions danced through her mind that she could not concentrate or search for answers. The captain swayed rhythmically back and forth, his smile frozen in the space between them. Black spots danced before Isabel's eyes until she suddenly collapsed onto the cool wooden planks of the deck, and darkness closed every image from her clouded eyes.